Let's say that you're the PM for reactions at Facebook. Facebook reactions are up 20%, but comments are down 10%. What do you do? Hey everyone, welcome back to another Exponent Product Management mock interview. My name's Kevin, and on today's show we have Peter. We're going to be doing an execution question today. Before we dive into that, Peter, do you mind telling the audience a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Peter Wu, and I was a product manager working at Facebook between 2018 to 2020. And so far, I have been a PM for almost 20 years.
Great. Sounds like you have a wide range of experience, which is really awesome. So thanks for coming on today's show. Like we mentioned, we're going to be doing an execution question today. So this is what I'd like to ask. Let's say that you're the PM for reactions at Facebook. Facebook reactions are up 20%, but comments are down 10%. What do you do?
Yeah, cool. So, as a PM for the reactions product, the first thing that we want to be able to understand is what exactly is the reaction product for and what user problem it is helping to solve. So reactions product was created to replace or as an alternative to the original Facebook like button. And the intention was to help users to express their variety of emotions or feelings towards content being shared on Facebook. And so now we understand what's the sort of North Star goal or the product mission of reactions. We also need to understand what are the key user persona here that reaction serves. Being able to understand this is very important in answering this question because it sets up the foundation in terms of how we can approach, solving this problem later down the road. So when we think about the reactions product, the first persona it comes to mind is essentially people who are consuming the content on Facebook and wanted to interact with the content, and reactions is a way for them to be able to do that. And reactions, different varieties of them, gives them the different options to express their feelings. So that's the first persona that we have, essentially the content consumers. The other persona that we have for the reactions product is the so-called content producers. Essentially, they are the people who share their content on Facebook, people who post or send stories. And for these people, what does the product solve for them? What kind of problem do we help solve with that? And so with the reactions product, it really gives people who share content an easier and faster way to gauge the feedback to their content that they have shared, compared to in the past. If you post something on Facebook, you could only see how many people like your content. And if you want to understand additional things, how people have reacted to your content, you probably have to go to the comment section and parse through what people wrote. And that's very burdensome for people who post and share content and want to understand how are their content doing, how are people responding to them. And so reactions product also helps to address that gap and the issue. Now, to go above and beyond with just producers and consumers, we also have Facebook as a platform, because Facebook as a platform orchestrates the content producers to meet with content consumers. And what kind of problem does reaction help to solve for Facebook as a platform? Well, reactions product helps Facebook platform gather more data and signal about users and about what kind of posts and what kind of reactions they have. And as you can imagine, without this product, then Facebook probably has to parse through comment section to understand what kind of things people are interested in. And so reactions product also helps Facebook to gather more data to understand what people like. And in turn, they can make newsfeed better to serve more relevant content to the users. Cool. So we talk about the kind of problem and the mission that the product has been, and the problem that it helps to solve. Now, let's take a look into the question itself. So the question has such that reactions is going up and comments is going down. The first thing that we want to be able to understand is like, is this an experiment that's just been done for a small percentage of users, right? If it's just say only 1% of the users, then perhaps we want to increase the rollout to more users to validate that if this data is trustworthy and is sort of measured at scale. The other thing that we also may want to understand is just like, is this a natural phenomenon to based on the product design themselves? Because if we sort of go back and think about why the reaction product was created in the first place, right? It was meant to help users to give easier and faster feedback to content being posted on Facebook. And and so obviously this product will sort of incentivize users to use that instead of using the comments to respond to content that being shared on Facebook. So by design, naturally, reactions going up will cause and cannibalize some of the comments going down.
So, how would you decide if this cannibalization is within your expectations or if this is something that's a little bit more concerning?
Yeah, very good question. So how do we know that is this expected or is this out of line and things like that? So this is where we need to use a variety of factors and metrics to help us understand whether this is like to your point, like expected, unexpected, or on the line. Uh, so so first of all, we want to how do we do that? Well, the first thing is that we need to come up with a structure or a framework in terms of help us make a decision on this subject. And the framework we will use is such that we can think about just from a product perspective. First of all, the reactions product is part of the newsfeed product. It's kind of like a product within the product. And then the newsfeed product is sort of one of the products within the entire Facebook ecosystem. And so in order to answer the question around like, is this expected, is this good, bad, then we need to look across this different layers of products and see how is the impact across the board to make that determination. Because ultimately, I think the question that we want to be able to ask is, okay, given that we see reactions and comments having these dynamics, how does it affect, say, news feeds overall metrics, or how does it affect Facebook ecosystem's overall metrics? And we can lay them out in such a way. So let me start by laying out the key things that we care about at the Facebook ecosystem level. So at the Facebook ecosystem level, we care about active users, we care about time spent, amount of time people spend using Facebook. We care about like people sharing content, essentially like number of people posting and number of people putting out stories. We also care about people's interactions with the content being shared on Facebook. So that will include like liking something or commenting on something, right? And finally, in addition to just this core key metrics, we also care about, like say, revenue, right? Like, is Facebook making more money because of this, or not making more money, or is it just staying flat? And also, we also have like, we can also measure user satisfaction. For example, like, is this making people liking Facebook more, or is it not? And so these are some of the key Facebook ecosystem level metrics that we can measure and monitor as part of the experiment to understand whether this is on the line or not. So that's the Facebook ecosystem part. Now, the second part is the newsfeed part. So what does newsfeed care about, right? So newsfeed cares about like serving relevant content to the users that are interesting to them, right? So newsfeed cares about like, are you interacting with the content being served, and what is the position of the content that you interact with, and just in general, how much time you spend on newsfeed, and also just how much time you spend scrolling without interacting with any of the content. So newsfeed wise, right? We have this top questions, and so the metrics are also like so. For metrics, we have something like meaningful social interactions, as we call them. Essentially, it measures about like whether you are liking or commenting or just viewing a piece of content, like any kind of interaction with the content. We would think that that's part of the so-called meaningful social interactions. So that's the part that we care about from newsfeed standpoint. Now, for reactions standpoint, like our product. So when we say reactions are going up, what do we mean by reactions is going up? Is it because of engagement or something else? But to clarify, right, like what do we care for the reactions product? We also need to have some metrics or ways that we can measure success about the reactions product. And the way we can think about it is we can think of it just from a user journey or user funnel perspective, right? Like if I think like I'm a content consumer, so how do I use the reactions product? Well, first of all, I see a piece of content and then I hover my mouse over the like button and the reaction experience comes up. So that's impressions, right? Like impression, just how many times people sort of go over to the like button and sees reactions. And we can have different metrics to look at that from different angles. Like we can look at just total number of impressions. We can also look at the percentage of people seeing that impression out of all the posts that we have served on newsfeed or people have seen. So after users seeing that, then if you find the reactions that fits your feeling of towards a specific post or stories, then you will click on that. So we can also measure the engagement there in terms of user clicking on the reaction. We can also sort of count like for specific type of reactions how many engagements there are, and there are also corner cases where the user may see the list of reactions, but then didn't pick any reactions, but resort back to commenting as well. We can call that kind of like reaction abandonment rate. So we can also track that, trying to understand, how is that in the overall picture. And that is mostly just on the content consumer side. We can also think from the content producer side. So for the content producers, essentially, what we want to understand is, by shipping this product, does this incentivize people to share more content, right? Given the fact that, hey, now I have an easier way to gauge people's feedback to my content, and I can tailor my content better according to the audience that I have. Does that incentivize me to post more and share more about my stories? And so that's definitely a metric that we want to track, which aligns with Facebook overall ecosystem metric, which is essentially number of posts. And once again, we can look at that metric from multiple angles. We can track just the total quantity or quantity per user over periods of time, and that helps understand that metric from these different angles better. Now, finally, for our third persona, the Facebook platform itself, like given that we accrue this reactions data, does this help Facebook platform perform better in terms of serving more relevant content to our users? And this part specifically aligns with newsfeed's goal, because newsfeed is all about serving relevant content to what people may like or engage with. However, for that, we'll have to do analytics over time because there's no good experiment that can demonstrate that. So that's our sort of reactions part of the metrics that we can evaluate. Just trying to get a deeper understanding when we say reactions is going up, like is it the engagement part or just the impression part? And even if we see that going up, how are the other pieces of the metrics? Like what about an abandonment rate, for example? Or what about like incentivizing people to post more? Did that hypothesis got validated or not? Now let's look at the comments part, right? The comments obviously is being affected by the fact that we ship reactions. So what do we care about comments? So comments essentially, once again, it's very similar to reactions such that it has a two-sided market because you have people who are posting, and the status quo is, okay, like people posting, if you want to understand how people sort of respond to your post, you have to go to comments to analyze and understand them other than just the like button. And so similarly, right, we have somewhat similar metrics. Like for comments, I suppose like for content consumers, you sort of see a post, right, and then that's kind of counting the impressions, and then you comment on the post, and so we could have. We can look at the comment metric from multiple angles. Once again, we can look at total comments overall. We can also look at sort of the ratio between people who comment on the post over all the posts being shared. So kind of like the commenting ratio. And so that's from the content consumer side. For content producers, okay, if comments going down, like does that affect people to post more, right? Like would that sort of demotivate people to post more? I think that's one big question we also want to understand. So so until now we have kind of laid out the framework in terms of how we can understand the holistic picture in terms of like, okay, for reactions going up, comments going down, certain X percentages, is it good or bad, expected or unexpected, and decide what should we do. So we can also walk through some actual scenarios, right? Like for example, let's say, the reaction engagement is going up, like click rate is going up. However, the number of comments or commenting ratio is going down. In that scenario, what we want to look further is into the newsfeed and Facebook ecosystem metrics to look into whether this affected those metrics at all. So let's say, even though comment going up and reactions going up, however, it helped drive positive impact to, say, the newsfeed metrics. For example, if we see that total sort of meaningful social interactions at the newsfeed level increased, and then and the Facebook ecosystem level metrics is somewhat flat, then it's still a good thing because it benefited the newsfeed product more, despite the fact that like there are some common drops. It could be a product design sort of by nature, sort of thing. And in other cases, like if it also brings positive impact to some of the Facebook ecosystem level metrics, then that's a no-brainer. Like it is actually a good thing, even though comments is going down. But if the Facebook ecosystem levels are going up, for example, if we made a positive impact to active users, time spent, or have successfully incentivized people to post and share more, then that's also still a good that comments gets a little bit cannibalized. So that's the sort of the sunny scenario. So we can also walk through a rainy day scenario. Right? A rainy day scenario is like, for example, okay, our reaction engagement is going up, comments is going down, and we see that overall newsfeed, meaningful social interactions, is also having some drops. Then that's a red flag that we should pay attention to and try to understand more in terms of why that could be the case, or if it made any negative impact to the Facebook ecosystem level metrics, then that's also a red flag that we need to dig a little more into to understand what have gone wrong. And so that's kind of like the rainy day scenario. There's also, of course, a sort of a cloudy day scenario, which is essentially if Facebook ecosystem and newsfeed level metrics are all flat. In other words, the reactions product didn't really bring any more positive impact to what we already have in place. Then it is questionable in terms of like, when we were designing the product, did we design it right? If we only replace comments but didn't bring any further benefits to the newsfeed or Facebook ecosystem level, is there still value in terms of having this product? Which is a good question to ask. Of course, having the reactions product still gives certain long-term benefit in terms of like providing Facebook more data that could fine-tune the newsfeed algorithm later down the road. And so that's a good thing just to understand or also see if there's value in the product at all. Any questions or?
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of these different scenarios. Let's have one very specific one, and then let's wrap up the mock interview. The one that I'd like to ask is, let's say that in reality what happens is that reactions are up, but then you also notice that this change has incentivized or disincentivized people to post more. So people are not posting as much anymore and reactions are up. You've spoken about this in terms of how this affects the ecosystem, but I'd like to know just in one or two sentences what you would tell the team once you've understood this.
So I think if it did not incentivize people to post more, one thing to look into is like when you say that, did you mean it is flat or did you mean that it actually dropped?
It's flat.
Okay, so if it's flat, you still want to look into other metrics like do we make positive impact in other areas like active users, time spent, and user satisfaction or revenue, for example. And if all of those are flat, like essentially we didn't make any positive impact or movements there at all, then I think we need to do two things. One is we need to do some product diagnostics and debugging and just trying to understand why did we not make a more positive impact there. Okay, because the initial hypothesis of having the reactions product was that it should increase the engagement of users overall. Since compared to commenting where users have to type more, to express themselves, having reactions products should incentivize them to respond to posts more and being easier, especially if you are on small screen or mobile devices. It's harder and takes longer to type. So I will ask the team to go back and try to brainstorm and do some more analysis in terms of how we can do better in terms of product design. The second thing that we may also want to look into is trying to debug the data a little bit more, trying to isolate the problem a little bit more in terms of like, hey, can we look into like the different user dimensions to understand where this is happening. Like, are we still making positive impact in certain areas, but just not big enough to make a sort of high level metric impact? And also dig into, like, are we having certain negative effect in certain areas? What I meant by that, by digging into the user dimension, is like, for example, you can look into different geographical locations, you can look into like different user devices, you can look into different user cohorts. You can also try to check the timing, like whether it is due to seasonality or certain things happening. Um, so that's the other thing that I will ask the team to do, which is just trying to isolate the problem, and also do more digging into the user journey and the funnel. Look through the metrics through each user steps and see where the drop off happens, and trying to understand those drop offs. Like, for example, were they due to certain product changes we made, or some other people made certain product changes to cause this to happen? Um, and finally, I asked the team to kind of challenge our own assumptions and be open to our own design, and look for where assumptions may not be true, or failed, that caused this to happen.
Totally, that makes sense. Well, thanks for your great answer in the mock interview. I've written down some pieces of feedback here that I'd love to share with you, and afterwards I'd love to hear any additional thoughts that you might have or any sort of self-feedback you might give yourself. What I've written down here is that I loved how in the beginning how you tied the question back to the mission and related it to why this is an important issue to look into. I also loved how you spoke about this also at the ecosystem level and at the product level. So you mentioned how reactions is sort of like sub-product within feed, and this has an impact at the ecosystem level as well. And you briefly highlighted some of the important metrics there, which I thought was really powerful. You also thought about this from several different angles. I liked how you touched on the entire user journey, so not just actually clicking on a reaction, but also perhaps hovering over a reaction. You touched on that as well. Two more things. At the very end, I thought it was really good how you sort of gave a decision tree for the different scenarios that could happen, and then we were able to dive deep into one of them. For example, the one where I mentioned, hey, what if this doesn't incentivize people to post more? And I loved how you used the terms like cloudy day, rainy day. I thought it really illustrated the different types of scenarios that we could face here. So all in all, Peter, great answer in this mock interview. And before we close the video, I'd love to hear what sort of self-feedback or any additional thoughts you might want to give to the audience.
Yeah, so I think during the interview, there are some parts where I could have communicated and articulated a little bit better. I must say that I didn't prep a lot, but yeah, I think there were certain areas where I could have communicated more clearly and not repeating myself more.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's definitely a very mature insight that you brought up. I think that many people who are preparing for interviews, a tip that I would have is that you should record yourself when you're doing mock interviews and listen back and see if you're rambling or see if you have any mannerisms that are being communicated. But all in all, great answer, Peter. And for the audience who are watching at home, good luck with your upcoming PM interview.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below to let us know that this video is valuable for you. And of course, check out hundreds more videos just like this at tryexponent.com. Thanks for watching and good luck on your upcoming interview.